Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the fourth annual meeting of the Nova Scotia College of Nursing. My name is Jason Reeves, Chair of the NSCN Board. It is 1 o'clock and I will now call the 2023 annual meeting of the Nova Scotia College of Nursing to order. I'm very pleased to be able to share with you some very recent work that NSCN has been involved with at the top of this meeting. As an act of reconciliation, NSCN has formalized a statement that recognizes the traditional territory of Indigenous people who called this land home before the arrival of the settlers. I would like to share that land acknowledgement with you now. Nova Scotia College of Nursing respectfully acknowledges that we are located in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Mi'kmaq. We recognize that Mi'kmaq as past, present, and future caretakers of this land, where the territory and its 13 First Nations are covered by the treaties of peace and friendship which remain in effect today. NSCN acknowledges the historic and ongoing systemic barriers and injustices caused by colonization and the resulting inequitable treatments of Indigenous people in healthcare. We recognize that colonialism has caused significant barriers of participation, representation, and success within the nursing profession. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of NSCN's responsibility and commitment to continuous learning, dismantling of ongoing legacies of oppression and inequity, and reconciliation to effect meaningful change in the regulation of the nursing profession. We are all treaty people. First of all, I would like to extend my appreciation to all of you for joining us here today and for making NSCN's annual meeting a priority in your very, very busy schedules. Our latest figures tell us that there are over 350 registrants and members of the public registered at today's annual meeting. We will have people joining us all across the province, the country, and internationally. We have people joining us who we want to extend a warm welcome to. We want to extend a warm welcome to the members of the public. It is important for you to know that you are the reason NSCN exists. You are the inspiration behind what we do and the decisions made by the NSCN board and staff. The annual meeting is really an accountability report to you and an opportunity for you to see how the nursing profession regulates itself, and to demonstrate that NSCN does this while maintaining the public as our top priority. Before we go any further, I would like to take an opportunity to introduce you to the NSCN board. The board is comprised of 11 members, including myself as chair, 5 public representatives, and 6 registrants. Pleased to be joining all of you online, we have the following public representative board members: Alana Baxter, Eric Poon, Paula Anderson, Robin Schlehoff. We also have the following registrant board members: Board Chair Gunny Brar, Ashley Clements, Claudia Hines, Krista Smith, and Rachel Sullivan. I know they are all very pleased to be joining all of you online today. Also with us today, we have our NSCN CEO and Registrar, Sue Smith, and our independent auditor from Grant Thornton, Alexandra Harris. You will also be meeting Heather Totten, Senior Director, Governance and General Counsel, a little further on in the agenda. Heather will be helping to moderate the chat box and bringing your questions forward to be addressed. Our second agenda item is to review the format of the annual meeting and a few words about how everyone can participate. We anticipate that the virtual meeting will end by 2 o'clock this afternoon. I would like to point out that there is IT staff standing by to provide support to anyone that may have difficulty. If you can hear me, if you can see me, I know at least you've been able to sign into the meeting. But please use the chat function if you have any technical questions that the NSCN staff can help you with. Turning to the materials for today's annual meeting, everyone would have received an email with links to the information required for this afternoon's meeting, including the annual meeting agenda, minutes from the 2022 NSCN Annual General Meeting, the 2022 NSCN Annual Report, the NSCN bylaws, and a resource titled NSCN 2023 Annual Meeting Participation. I would like to bring to your attention to item number 6 on the annual meeting agenda titled Discussion Period. This is an opportunity for you to raise questions that you may have for us and an opportunity for us to respond. You can ask questions or make a comment of the information presented. You can also ask questions regarding any nursing regulatory matters. While we will be addressing all of your questions during this period, we also encourage you to submit your questions at any point during the meeting using the chat function, which you will find at the bottom corner of your screen. You can type your question in the box, click enter, and send the message to us. To ensure that everyone has an opportunity to participate, we ask that you ask the questions only once. As chair, I will be using discretion in limiting or extending questions or discussion to ensure proper functioning of the AGM and to adhere to the agenda timelines which the board has previously approved. We will address many of your questions as possible during the time allotted. If we are unable to get to your question because of timing, or maybe because your question really deserves more consideration for a thorough response, we have committed to responding in writing to all of your questions received and sharing the NSCN website and newsletter. We invite you to please stay tuned for that. Now moving on to agenda item number 3, minutes from the 2022 NSCN annual meeting. A link to the 2022 NSCN annual meeting minutes would have been sent to you in advance of the meeting. The board approved these minutes on February 23 and submitted it for your information. We are now on to the 4th agenda item, the NSCN 2022 annual report. I would like to remind you again at this time that you are welcome to submit questions that you would like to have addressed during the question period. And once again, please remember you can submit your questions in the chat box, which you can find at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. I will now invite Sue to join me in presenting our chair and CEO report.
Thank you, Jason. Just a reminder that Jason outlined the documents that you have. So this is going to be some highlights from our 2022 annual report. Since NSCN was created, which was June 4th, 2019, so as Jason said, it's our 4th meeting, we reflect on each passing year. And again, it's been an extraordinary year. In addition to the impact of COVID-19 that continued to have on the lives of Nova Scotians and in healthcare, there was a great deal of attention directed towards what many have described as a global nursing shortage. As a fairly young organization, we are only 4, I'm proud at how NSCN has been able to rise to the occasion, especially during these challenging times. 2022 was another year of demonstrating why it has been so important for NSCN to be established as a very flexible and responsive regulator. And that's just part of our DNA as an organization. The 2020-22 annual report, which I invite you to read fully when you have the chance, if you haven't already, focuses on some highlights on how we deliver on our 3 strategic directions or objectives of effective, transparent, and accountable regulation.
On page 8 of the report, you will see examples of how we delivered on the strategic goal, effective regulation. The NSCN board sets the strategic directions for NSCN through purpose-driven ends that are the foundation of the organization's strategic plan. The NSCN board establishes a 3-year plan for the NSCN's first ever strategic ends, which Sue just mentioned. After extending the strategic ends last year, we met as a board to review the intent and success of the existing ends in the fall of 2022. The NSCN board made a decision to renew the ends for the next 5 years because we knew how well they had served the organization in past and current needs on behalf of the public. I should point out that the NSCNs are based on the principle of right touch regulation, which continues to be appropriate direction for NSCN as a regulator. Some of you may recall that the Ns were originally chosen by NSCN as a new regulator based on significant consultation with over 2,000 stakeholders, including the public and nurses. As a result, the NSCN board is confident that the strategic Ns represent priority stakeholders also believe are important for successful regulation. Sue.
Thank you, Jason. In 2022, NSCN continued our work to implement a new regulatory information system that provides a user-friendly portal for applicants, registrants, and the public. This is particularly exciting and meaningful to us because it delivers on a goal that we had set for ourselves when we first started creating one nursing regulator in the province. And it lays the foundation for a consistent and more efficient user experience. The new system will further streamline our processes to positively impact the experience of our stakeholders and increase coordination within the organization to maximize workplace efficiencies. The fantastic news is that the new system will also support our ability to generate greater statistics, demographics, and trends that will be useful in evaluating the work we do as a regulator, including our priorities, programs, and services. Key to this work last year was the selection of a vendor to help build us this platform, which we were able to do after a very comprehensive request for proposal RFP process. One of our milestones last year was launching the pilot of the regulatory system. And after a successful 3-month pilot, we began implementing our first of 4 phases, starting with registration services, which will positively impact the public, nurses, and other stakeholders in Nova Scotia. I guess this is a sneak peek of what we'll also be sharing with you at next year's annual meeting because of the other phases we'll be going through. But it gives you an idea of where this project sits and the fact that we have already successfully introduced 2 of the 4 planned phases in the system. This includes an efficient and easy to use portal where individuals can complete their annual registration renewal, request documents they require, and satisfy other regulatory needs. It was something, as I say, and Jason would recall this, is that we have had at the top of our list even before we officially became one. And even though on the surface, as customers, registrants, public, and others come through the portal, we actually had a couple of systems behind the scenes. So it's so wonderful to be working with just one system, and it has worked so well. An important milestone for every successful organization is the creation and reporting of key performance indicators, KPIs. Last year, we worked hard to develop a reporting system for our stakeholders that would enable us to share performance results with the public and others. Our KPIs are a metric that enable us to measure our success as an organization while tracking our progress towards achieving both strategic and operational goals. In 2022, we were pleased to create and share a new KPI report, and we share the update every quarter with the public, the board, registrants, and other stakeholders through a dedicated page on our website and also through social media. You will see each quarterly report reflects the current status of each indicator that we continually strive to achieve. And we're pleased to demonstrate our accountability in meeting our strategic objectives and displaying how evaluation of our work enables us to better assess areas for improvement. Now I'd like to talk about transparent regulation. And on page 11 of the annual report, we feature highlights of how NSCN has demonstrated the objective of transparent regulation. Customer service matters to NSCN. The NSCN board and staff are committed to enhancing how the public, registrants, and other stakeholders experience NSCN when they engage with us, no matter how they engage with us. Expanding on the development of our customer service strategy, we invited stakeholders to participate in a customer experience survey. The survey helped us gather data that would allow us to identify and better understand the needs of our customers and how to continue to deliver excellent customer service. I am pleased to share that 74% of survey respondents indicated that they were somewhat satisfied or extremely satisfied with their customer experience. And 90% of respondents noted they would contact NSCN for support again in the future. The data we collected revealed common themes that stakeholders told us they value, including knowledgeable staff, prompt attention, and empathetic support. Based on the results of the survey, all staff completed customer service training, 100%, including me. I have to demonstrate these things as well. And we targeted the very aspects of customer service our stakeholders told us they value. The goal is to continue to deliver a level of customer service our stakeholders tell us is important to them on a daily basis, which we look forward to containing in all of our interactions. Diversity and inclusion. As a regulator and an employer, we are committed to creating a positive change and fostering respectful environments where diverse voices from all communities are sought, heard, and incorporated in meaningful ways. NSCN's Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, EDI, vision is to support the development of an ongoing respectful and supportive regulator that builds and maintains programs and services that reflect and assist in meeting the diverse needs of those we serve. NSCN has been on our EDI journey for the past 3 years, and work initially was focused internally on the staff and the board. Last year, we did a considerable amount of planning our future state with a third-party EDI consultants to help identify our future work and overall goals for culture, workforce diversification, communication, community engagement, system processes, and learning and education. We also conducted an EDI survey of staff last year to help us gather baseline data and evaluate the integration of EDI values and practices into our existing organizational processes. I am so proud to say that 100% of NSCN staff participated in the survey, which our third-party consultants told us rarely ever happens. This demonstrated how committed the NSCN team is to the organization's equity, diversity, and inclusion journey, and impact staff, knowing that this work will have impact on the public and all of our stakeholders. Last year, we invited and learned from equity-deserving groups at development sessions to support our ongoing learning and education.
It also pleases me to share that the NSCN board also held education sessions to further our own EDI and public linkage goals. The goal was to help the board better understand how nursing regulation can impact the diverse needs of our communities. As a board, we have completely been supportive of equity, diversity, and the inclusion journey of NSCN, and we look forward to the next stages of this important work that will evolve with external stakeholders in 2023. There is a registrant survey coming out this summer that I would like Sue to tell you more about.
Yes, thank you, Jason. I'm diverting a bit away from our accomplishments of last year, but I do want to take this time to introduce an opportunity for all stakeholders to help further NSCN's EDI work. This summer, we'll be launching an EDI demographic and sentiment survey. This survey will support us to better understand what support and improvements we can provide nurses so that they have the confidence to provide culturally sensitive care to the public. We plan to launch this survey alongside our license renewal period from August to October 2023. The information that you share as registrants will help us better understand how diverse the nursing workforce is in healthcare and identify any gaps or barriers that may exist in serving diverse populations. Nurses will be given the opportunity to participate at the start of August, and NSCN will share the aggregate findings, recommendations, and actions to be pursued. Jason and I want to share this news with you as of today, and we hope that you will engage with this work with us because your voice matters. And I should also mention that this survey is voluntary and will be anonymous. And not last or least, I'd like to talk about accountable regulation. On page 13 of the annual report, we've highlighted an example of how we have demonstrated accountable regulation in 2022. Building on our innovative solutions to register and license nurses quickly during the early days of COVID-19, so very early in 2020. We carefully reviewed our registration and licensing processes to ensure that they're relevant, flexible, and positively contributing to the supply of nurses. Last year, NSCN continued to recognize the rapidly evolving changes in our healthcare system, particularly and including the shortage of nurses in Nova Scotia. In the past, it was widely believed that professional regulators should not be drawn into responding to workforce issues. There's a growing body of evidence that asserts that the lack of healthcare workers, nurses in our case, may pose a greater risk to patient safety than any changes in standards. So this is definitely a significant change, that the fact that the shortage of nurses presents a safety risk from a regulator perspective as well. As a result, we have rapidly adapted our regulatory approaches to support the supply of nurses into the workforce while safely maintaining appropriate safeguards. We felt it was important for us to recognize the needs of the workforce demands of the healthcare system and needs of the public, and to respond to that through our capacity as a regulator. So, what did we do? Well, the work to support the supply of nurses is obviously ongoing right now in 2023, but last year, we further streamlined registration and licensure processes for international nurses. We added more options to meet the English language proficiency registration requirement. We provided earlier access to the national registration exam. We authorized earlier entry and to return to practice processes. We also made changes to registration processes to ensure nurses registered and licensed in other Canadian provinces could obtain licensing here in Nova Scotia as fast as possible, such as moving a process that took traditionally 5 days down to 1 day or less. While collaboration has been key to how NSCN operates, the past several years have underscored the ongoing collaboration and the importance of that collaboration with our health system partners. And we have been proactively working with others towards this ongoing supply and mobility of the nursing workforce. So as we look at the closing of the annual report, I encourage you to read the report for more comprehensive information. As always, we are grateful to those who continue to play a role in the provision of safe, competent, ethical, and compassionate care to all Nova Scotians. On behalf of the NSCN team, I'd like to thank you for your participation in the work we do on behalf of the nursing profession and all Nova Scotians. Before I hand things back to Jason, I'd also like to acknowledge and thank the NSCN staff and the board for their ongoing commitment and support. In particular, I'd like to thank Jason for his leadership through the years. Jason's term as NSCN board chair comes to an end at the end of the month. And I want to thank you, Jason, for your dedication, your commitment, your leadership. You walk the talk, Jason. For those of you who don't know, Jason has a wealth of experience on the board with NSCN and with the College of Licensed Practical Nurses of Nova Scotia, CLP-NNS, before we became NSCN. He was a registrant member of the board for over 3 years with CLP-NNS, a member of the NSCN board, a founding member of the NSCN board since the organization was created in June 2019. And Jason was the first LPN board chair. Jason, you have played such a critical key role in the creation of NSCN, and I personally, as well as on behalf of the staff, I'm grateful for your leadership particularly in governance over the years. Thank you, Jason. It's been my absolute pleasure to serve with you.
Thank you very much, Sue. Before I respond personally to your comments, I would like to begin by thanking those who are here to serve, the public of Nova Scotia. You are why NSCN exists and the motivation not only behind what NSCN does, but the governance work the board does as well. I would also like to thank the nurses NSCN regulates across the province. It has been yet another challenging year in healthcare. As a nurse, I understand the challenges you faced. I've seen the sacrifices that each and every one of you have made, and I'm grateful for the support you have shown to NSCN as self-regulated professionals. I would also like to recognize the board for their work that often goes on well behind the scenes as a governing body, and to thank each board member for their efforts at the board table. I hope you all continue to be proud of the accomplishments that you will make as the NSCN board. I would also like to thank Sue for her leadership and support during another challenging year in the midst of a pandemic. I will look back at my time on the NSCN board and the CLP-NNS board before that with great fondness. Sue, our journey together in 2017 with the work of creating one nursing regulator, and I will remain grateful for your guidance over the years. I know that you are planning to retire in June of 2024, and I know there's still a lot you are looking forward to completing with NSCN over the next year. It has been a privilege to work with you so closely over the past number of years. Now on to agenda item number 5, the NSCN 2022 Auditor's Report. The Auditor's Report is included in the NSCN Annual Report, pre-circulated and available on the NSCN website. Alexander Harris from Grant Thornton will present the 2022 Auditor's Report for NSCN. I will now ask Ms. Harris to present the Auditor's Report. You will have an opportunity to address any questions that you may have about the report during the discussion period. Welcome, Alexandra.
All right, thank you, Jason. So moving on to going through the report. So Sorry about that. So the first part is the independent auditor's report. So you'll see that on the first and the second page of the financial statement. So on April 20th, Grant Thornton met with the NSCN board to review the draft financial statements and speak about any matters arising from the audit. So these matters included no unusual items, and it also included fraud or significant control deficiencies. And we have noted that there was no fraud suspected or alleged throughout the audit, and no significant control deficiencies to note. The board approved the financial statements at the meeting, which establishes the audit report date that you will see, which is April 20th. And we did issue an unqualified, or also known as clean, audit opinion under the accounting standards for not-for-profit organizations. So this is the highest level of an audit opinion that we can provide, which is great. So moving on to the statement of operations. So you'll see this in page 3 of the financial statements. So the first thing I'd just like to mention is that revenues are consistent from the previous year. As you can see, they only went up about $30,000. And you will see specifically on each line item. So the licensing and other related fees has increased significantly from the prior year. And this is mainly due to total registrant numbers increasing, as well as an increase in the Canadian Nurses Protective Society fees themselves. There was a decrease in investments income due to the market performance, and we've seen this across many of our clients, and this is just a result of the closing of the pandemic and how the markets are at this point. We have seen since December 31st that the markets are beginning to reverse themselves, and they are increasing again, which is also great to see. From an expense side of things, so total expense did increase as a result of the increased liability insurance, salaries, costs, exam fees, and legal fees. So moving on to page 4, which is the statement of financial position. So the one item I wanted to highlight in the asset section is related to investments. So you will see here that the investments are separated out between long-term and short-term investments. So the short-term investments are those maturing within 12 months, where the long-term investments are anything that will mature 12 months or later. And so if you were to net these two items together, you will see that there isn't a drastic total change between the two amounts, but that is something we did want to bring to your attention. In terms of liability, so there was a slight decrease in payables, and this was strictly due to timing of when things were paid during the year compared to last year. There was an increase in deferred revenue, and this was strictly driven to the increased licensing fees as well as the increased number of registrants. So this will result in an increased revenue you'll see going forward into the 2023 fiscal year. The last piece is there was a decrease in the retirement benefits, and this was just, again, a fluctuation from the market based on interest rates. Moving into page 5, which is a statement of changes in net assets. So you can see here that they have been separated into restricted and unrestricted funds. So some items I wanted to highlight here is that there is an adjustment to the liquidity reserve to align with policy, and you would have seen this last year as well, and it's a transfer that is made every year. The next one is there was an increase in unrestricted fund, and this is mainly just due to the excess of revenues over expenditures. As you can see, the 88,000 there, with the offset of the retirement benefit obligation, which is the $111,000. The last piece is just that the ending net assets balance is healthy, and we just wanted to reiterate that to you. So you can see the ending balance has increased from the prior year, which just means that there is a larger fund to continue on with NSCN moving into the future. Page 6 is a statement of cash flows. So what this does is it basically just shows how cash was spent throughout the year. So the cash balance is slightly decreased from the previous year, and this is mainly just due to the changes in the investment. So you will see that there is a large unrealized loss, and again, this is not a true loss. It's strictly due to the market fluctuations, and as I mentioned, we are starting to see interest rates switch over the other way. So it should see an increase next year. And then offsetting that is the acquisition of investments as well. As you can see down in the investing piece, there was $755,000 reacquisition back into investments. Pages 7 to 13 are notes to the financial statements. So one thing I just wanted to highlight here is the allocation of the administrative expenses throughout the statement of operations, as you would have seen. And so this is just a reallocation to registrant, legislative, and administration services. And this is basically strictly allocated on department costs. And finally, there are no significant changes to the financial statement notes in the current year compared to the prior year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you joining us today, Alexandra, and walking us through all of that information. We will respond to any questions meeting attendees may have about the auditor's report at our next agenda item coming right up. And now that we are on to the next agenda item number 6, which is our scheduled discussion period, I would like to remind you to please submit any of your questions you would like to have considered via the chat function. We have set aside 10 minutes for this portion of the meeting. Following the annual meeting, NSCN staff will create and share a Q&A document that will include responses to any questions posed by meeting attendees today. These questions will, we may not be able to answer all questions in that 10 minutes, but we said we are promised that we will get back to everybody based on time allowed. This information will be made available on the NSCM website in the days ahead. At this time, I would ask Heather Totten, Senior Director of Governance and General Counsel, who has kindly been moderating the chat box, to read the questions received.
Great. Thank you very much, Jason. So far, we've received several questions for you and Sue about the annual report. So I'm going to dive in. The first question is a governance question, and so I'm going to direct this question to you, Jason. The question is, why didn't NSCN call for any resolutions for the annual meeting this year?
That's a great question, and I do want to thank whoever did ask that question. NSCN held a public consultation on bylaw amendments concerning resolutions last fall. And after we as a board reviewed other regulators and opportunities to evolve the NSCN bylaws to reflect current best practices. So after that consultation and after that review, the bylaws ended for the practice of considering resolutions at the annual meeting, which is really more of an association practice or an association type model. The kind of the caveat to this is all practicing registrants have the ability to submit resolutions any time of the year. You don't have to wait till the annual meeting to submit a resolution. So if it's January or March or August, submit your resolution. The board will take into consideration all resolutions submitted. And I hope that really has helped answer your question.
Great. Thank you very much, Jason. And as staff person, I'll just add to that the link for registrants to submit a resolution is on the website under the board page of the website. So our next question, Jason, is also another governance question. So I'm going to direct this question to you again. So the question that we've received is, nurse practitioner representation is very important. Can you tell me why it's not a requirement to have a nurse practitioner on the NSCN board?
Certainly can answer that. That's two great questions in a row. It's the best part of these discussion periods that I like is when we get really good questions like this. NSCN is a regulatory body that's there for the public. We are not really here to truly represent the registrants. So when we look at that representation type model, that's more of an association or union type model. So the government did set out requirements really within the Nursing Act that we must have at least one RN and one LPN on the board. And the board has had several discussions around this topic, and where an MP is required to be a registered nurse. In theory, by having a registered nurse on the board, regardless if they're an MP or an RN, we are meeting our legislative requirements. So it is important to remember that all nurses, regardless of their designation, represent the public interest on the board. I hope that does answer your question.
Great. Thank you very much, Jason.
You're welcome.
So we have another question, and this time the question is operational in nature. And so I'm going to direct this question to Sue. Sue, the question that we've received is, does NSCN's new registration and licensure process for international nurses from the 7 designated countries mean that the college is lowering its standards? Do you have any safety concerns or concerns that this is not good for the public or for nursing?
Gosh, first and foremost, absolutely no concerns, absolutely no issues. And thanks for the question, because I think we have quite a few international nurses on our call today, knowing this could come from anybody, member of the public and whatnot. And I'm really glad to have this question. Certainly, we've had a fair bit of media attention as well. And one of the messages we're trying to get out is that what we have done, what we do hasn't changed. It's the how we do it. And we have been on this road since COVID in 2020, when we brought back over 500 nurses to respond to the needs of the healthcare system. And so we've continually been challenging ourselves about, do we need this form? How can we look at this faster? Let's walk in the shoes of folks that are coming into this experience. And so while we still maintain public safety, and in fact, I think as one of us mentioned earlier, it has actually become a public safety issue, the shortage of nurses. So what we were able to do, and be the first in the country to do it, based upon extensive 10-year plus experience with the top 7 countries that represent 87% of the volume of nurses that we have, we were able to look at everything from their education, that they're educated in English, and very long story short, the scope of practice for those who are licensed and registered in those 7 countries and have good character and are in good standing, that their scope is equivalent to a nurse who is practicing in Nova Scotia. So we looked at sort of the bigger picture of scope, and there's no public safety issue when it comes to them coming here. They have the same scope as a nurse practicing here. And then as an individual, every applicant that is coming in has to write an entry to practice exam, the national entry to practice exam, and that ensures the individual competency of the nurse. So I know I went on and on a bit about that, but it's something that we're pretty passionate about, and we're really just so pleased with the phenomenal response that we've gotten. Thank you again to whoever asked the question.
And Sue, if I might add on to that just a little bit, I feel it's important to, also say that the board was 100% in support behind this decision to really look at this new process, and it is important, something for us all to really think about. It's so important that NSCN employs a true equity lens. When we look at the way that we approach registration, if we are truly to be equitable and we are being inclusive, we need to be consistent with all applications that are coming in through NSCN. So I didn't want to steal your question from you, but I just wanted to add that little piece onto it.
I'm really glad you did, Jason, because the equity lens has been very important to us as well. So Thanks.
Great, thank you, Sue and Jason. We have another question here, and again, this is an operational question, and it is kind of also along the lines of questions about the new international application process. So Sue, this will be a question for you again. The question is, I am a nurse in Nigeria and have applied to be licensed in Nova Scotia. I have not had a response to my application. How long should I wait to learn what is happening? Also, will NSCN help my family immigrate to Canada and find a job?
Wow. Well, thank you for that question. And it actually is a question that we are getting through various means, social media. I'm getting emails, others are. And first and foremost, we want you. We want you to come to Nova Scotia. We want to make sure that you are able to practice here in Nova Scotia, and we want to keep you here in Nova Scotia. And I guess at the top, and this isn't making excuses, I guess I've been quoted as saying that when we started with the 7 expedited countries in May 1st, we've blown the rafters off, shall we say. We were expecting maybe 3,000, 4,000, maybe 5,000. And, you know, as of today, I wanted to look at our latest statistics. We're at 893 applicants. So we will attend to you. And for anybody out there that has questions, including those going through the process, please, please, please go to our website, www.nscn.ca. www.nscn.ca. We have so much information on there and so many pages of information, including links for immigration, because as you can imagine, the part for the regulator is the registration and licensure of international nurses. And we convened a roundtable last week of all the key partners in this healthcare system. And so it was folks like the Office of Professional Healthcare Recruitment, something called Niche, which is a program that's been established to look at immigration and settling. We have immigration at the table. We have the Health Authority at the table. We have the Department of Health and Wellness at the table. We have long-term care at the table. So we have all the key partners in the healthcare system at the table. And I'm really pleased to share that an international nurse task force has been created, and it is co-chaired by the Office of Professional Healthcare Recruitment and the Niche program, NICHE. You can look it up, but it's about the international recruitment of healthcare workers and getting folks settled. So stay tuned. We're getting multiple, and also if you've already submitted your information, I know it may appear, although we're catching up with folks, please don't keep sending in questions, and please don't keep, going by different means, because we'll get it, and we are going to get to you. But by adding multiple ways of coming at us about this, we have to get through all that information. So we are so looking forward to having any folks join us that qualified to do so. But we certainly encourage you to stay abreast of these things. Go to nsn.ca. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sue. So Sue and Jason, I just will note for those that are participating today, we are international application process is a hot topic, and we've got a lot of questions in our chat box about that. As Jason mentioned at the beginning, we do want to give everyone an opportunity to ask different types of questions. So I am going to put those questions aside. Again, we will answer all of these questions in a Q&A document, which will be shared after the meeting by email and on our website. So we will answer your questions, but in the interest of hearing some other types of questions, Sue, I have another question for you about operations, and this is actually about the EDI survey you mentioned earlier. So the question that we've received is this: Sue, you mentioned that you were doing an equity, diversity, and inclusion survey of registrants. Why are you collecting this type of personal information, and how will it be used?
Well, thank the person for asking that question. We are really excited about this really unique opportunity we have to be able to, along with relicensure or licensure, when we start the relicensure process, usually opens in August and goes through until the last day in October, but please don't leave it till then. Is the fact that it's voluntary and anonymous, but what a great opportunity to really understand and get a baseline of our registrants, who they are, what their understanding is, what their opinion is of different topics related to equity, diversity, and inclusion, and to be able to take that baseline and look at, as in our role as a regulator, how can we address, are there any glaring gaps, particularly again from that lens as a regulator of those nurses who have the skills, competence, and knowledge to provide quality care to Nova Scotians, but to really find out, are there some gaps that we just either weren't aware of or that they're larger than we think, around how can we then look at, are there things we can do as a regulator or work with other healthcare key partners in, again, at the end of the day, being able to provide a culturally safe care to the public and all Nova Scotians, and also in our role as a support to registrants as well. So stay tuned, because this is a unique opportunity, and I know the board was very supportive of this as well. So stay tuned, lots more to come.
Great, thanks, Sue. So I'm watching the clock, and we are pretty much at the end of the time that we had allotted for potential questions. I think we do have time for one last short question. Just again, to ensure that we're getting a good variety of the questions that we are seeing in the chat box. So Sue, I will pose this last question to you. And this is with a question with respect to the audit. So the question that has come in is, why is there such a large loss on investments?
Yes, thank you to the person who's asked this question. The short answer is the markets. Everybody was hit either directly or otherwise. Look at inflation, look at the cost of our groceries, the cost of just living. And we have a very safe portfolio. We have very strict guidelines in our board policies around very safe investments. However, so we don't take any risks on that, but everybody was definitely hit. The board has monitored it closely. We've brought in our folks who look after these things and answered questions that they may have. And the good news is we've seen things respond, and there is a positive trend back up, but that really is the short answer.
Great. Okay, thank you very much, Sue. And so thank you, Sue and Jason. As I mentioned earlier, we have gotten to the end of the time we had allotted for questions. And in fact, actually we went over because we were getting so many great questions in the chat box. I thought it was okay if we added a little bit more time in the interest of being transparent and getting to everyone's questions. Again, we'll create a Q&A document with all your questions and our answers that we'll share with all the participants here today by email and also on the NSCN website. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Jason.
Thank you, Heather, and thank you to everyone for submitting your questions. I will now move on to agenda item number 7, introduction of the new NSCN board. Before we conclude the meeting, I would like to acknowledge the representatives who have left the board. Special thank you to Anne-Marie Delory, Betty Thomas, Shanda McDonald, Michael Gillis, Susan Nasser, and Teresa McDonald. It is also my pleasure to announce the newest member of the NSCM board, Tricia Lane, who was appointed by acclamation just last week. Tricia will join the board on June the 1st. I would also like to acknowledge 2 existing board members who are moving into new roles. Also on June 1st, Gunny Brar will become the new NSCN board chair, and Krista Smith will become the new board vice chair. I know the NSCN board will continue to accomplish all of its governance goals in the future on behalf of the public of Nova Scotia. Well, that brings us to the end of our agenda. On behalf of the board, thank you very much for your time, effort, and contributions to regulating the nursing profession in the public's interest. I would also like to thank all of you for joining us today. I now declare the 2023 annual meeting of the Nova Scotia College of Nursing adjourned. Thank you very much for joining us today.